Take two.
Yes, sir. You're on.
All right. So we're going to work on this. This is a President C600. It's a Thermo King unit. This is the newer units that Thermo Kings are running, but they're similar to our older units, SB230s, SB300s. All the control panels the same. You have basic controls. We'll do this while it's off so it doesn't start on us. On-off buttons, simple, self-explanatory. That's all you need to worry about with those. That's all they do. The button here, that is your start, stop, or continuous selector, depending on what load you're taking, what kind of mode you want to be operating in. You'll either run it continuous, which is a majority of your loads, or you can toggle it once, just hit it once, and then your unit will start and stop when it needs to, when it reaches
like a thermostat at home.
Like a thermostat at home. It helps to save fuel, but if you have issues with the unit, if it shuts down, then it's not going to fire back up and it's a pain in the ass. So normally we leave it on continuous. There's certain loads, or a warmer load, something that's a produce, you can run it 50 degrees. It's not as critical. You can run it on that to save some fuel. It's up to the load. But then our top button, we have a manual defrost. For whatever reason, if the unit they can ice up inside just like an air conditioner or refrigerator at home. That's just a way you can toggle and let it defrost, get the ice out, and run a little better. Normally you'll never need to touch it if the unit works properly. So we'll fire it up and we can go over some of the basic controls and different things that the mechanics are looking for in the shop. So we're going to go through now. You're going to hit your on button. It'll go through its pre-trip. It'll inspect itself in the computer. And you also have your indicator start coming to life when it's ready to go. Normally your indicator is going to be white. You're going to see a white T and LEDs. That's the same thing you're looking at in the mirror going down the road. That lets you know everything with the reefer is okay. If you ever see it as a yellow K, that means that there's an issue with the reefer. It may not stop running, but there's something that you need to report to the shop at the end of your trip, or let us know ahead of time, or get to a shop if it stops. But it will tell you right on the screen what you need to start and what you need to tell the mechanics. So right now you have a yellow T, or a yellow K, it goes to the white T. Now the reefer's coming online. You can hear the fuel pump start running, and we'll get into the menu so it won't start on us. So now I'm going to go into a diagnostic menu. This is not something a driver would do. This is just so we can talk and go over a few of the controls. This menu is the same as a driver menu. When you just hit your menu button, you won't need to go into this one. But first thing will be your hour meters. That's all found in the menu. It just lets you know how many hours are on the engine and on the unit. Every once in a while you might get a phone call, Ed or the shop requesting hours, but there you go. This one has 24,667 hours. Now it's going to start, so you're not going to be able to hear anything. Pause. All right, so we're back in our home. We went through the menu. Next thing we'll go over is set point. If you're going to change, depending if you have a hot load or a cold load, it's really easy. This button changes your set. You have plus and minus to set your number. And all you have to do after your number is set is hit OK, and that'll program in your new number. So this one's now at 35 degrees. That's where it'll maintain. Next thing is gauges. As a driver, you should never need the gauges, but once again, we might call you and ask you some things if you have an issue. So right here, where's your coolant temperature? It's a chilly day, it's 43 degrees. The next, okay, what's the coolant level? If you blew a hose, that wouldn't say okay, that'd say bad or low. Right now we're okay, we got coolant in. Next, you got your engine oil pressure. The engine's not running. If the engine's not running, this will say okay. Right now it just says low. Next, you have your engine oil. If it had no oil, or it leaked out, or someone didn't put any in, that would not be okay. That would be low as well. Next, you have your amps. This will tell us if the alternator is working or not. Right now the reefer's not running, so it won't show anything here. If it's running, you would see anywhere from 65 to 15 amps. Stop.
All right, you're on.
So we got over amperage. Now we're going to go to our next setting. That's going to be your battery voltage. If you got to a unit that wasn't running, and it turned on but it wouldn't crank over, you can see right here. If it says like 10 volts, 9 volts, it may not start. This reefer was just running, so it still has the amperage and the charge in there from recently running. But your normal open voltage on a battery is going to be anywhere from 12.5 to 12.8 is a good range. That'll be a perfectly good battery. So our next thing in the list, we're going to go to engine RPM. Once again, engine's not running. If you're on a low idle reefer, it should be about 1400 RPM. If you're on a high, if it's running high, it's hot out, it's in high mode, that'll be about 2500 RPM. Once again, we're not running, so it's 0. Your fuel level, just it's on here. It's more of a pain in the ass than it's worth most of the time because you have a gauge on the tank. But if you want to come out and see what your fuel level is, it does have a sensor.
How many gallons does it hold?
A gallon on the, or a tank on these is a 50-gallon tank.
50, okay.
So there you go. You got 80% of 50 gallons. You're right about there. You're about 40 gallons.
Right.
Next, your discharge pressure. This is something that's diagnostic for the mechanics. You don't need to know what this means. Just you need to know how to get there if you call us and something's wrong and we ask you to go here. So this will be, once again, when it's running, the discharge pressure, you'll see anywhere from 180 psi to normally about 350 psi, depending on what model you have. That's just something that we might ask you for. Same with suction pressure. Right here, your suction pressure right now is 25. If you're on a non-running unit, we ask for that, and it hasn't run in a while, it'll go right about based off of outside temperature. When the unit's running, you'll see anywhere, it'll dip down to almost 0 psi. Next, EVT. Don't worry about this. We're never going to ask you for it. This is something that's censored for the unit. Alternator frequency. This is only found on newer units. Once again, don't worry about it because we're probably never going to ask you about it. And then on-off. So you can turn the unit off here. No one ever does. Just use the off button.
Can you show us again? Okay, you're going to hit exit, but
Yep.
now show us how to get back to that panel.
Right. So this is exit. We're back to our main screen.
Right.
Right now, if you notice, the Reefer is not running, even though the screen's on. That's because we put it in our cycle sentry mode, or our start-stop mode. This thing now, we have it set. We want 35. It gave us 34, 34.7. We're right about there. When this thing gets up to about 35 or 36, it will automatically start itself.
Like a thermostat at home.
Like a thermostat at home, correct.
Right.
Only thing, it's great for fuel, but the more starts, the more work on your battery and your starter in the unit. It's normally, like I said, we don't really use it too much in what we do with produce.
Now here at CF, we want the driver to use continuous or continuous cycle, which is
for an outbound load. If you have a produce load, you want that temperature constant. If you have something, I mean, there's some loads we don't even run the Reefer on backhauls. If we get a canned food load, you might have it just for a low humidity. You might have it set for 50 degrees.
Right.
Something like that. If it's a night, and once again, today it's 45 degrees. So if you're running a 35 degree load, the ambient's not going to affect it. So you could run that for a fuel situation.
Okay.
But like I said, to get back to that menu, you're just going to come in here and you're going to hit gauges. It's something diagnostic, really, if we call you. Or if you're mechanically inclined and the Reefer shuts down, you might be able to find the problem before you even call for help. So next thing we'll go over, it's sensors. And once again, this is almost purely a diagnostic for mechanics. Just need to know how to get here where it says sensor. If you need to call for roadside or you need to call the mechanics, we might ask you these to diagnose you on the road, try to help you get back going. So here you go, your control return air temp. That is what the computer sees coming back to the box out of the unit. A lot of this stuff is all just sensors for the Reefer, but you can flip through here. Display return. This is what the screen is saying. The box temp is. Here's what it's actually the computer thinks is going into the box as temperature to cool it down. Then you have your display discharge. Once again, this is just what the screen is seeing. None of these are really something a driver would have to know or memorize for the most part. So we'll go ahead and back out of this stuff. Tell me when?
Yep.
Okay, so everything in here for the most part is mechanical. It's for a technician to diagnose. You might get asked a question. You just need to know how to get there, and most likely if you're on the phone with us, we can remind you how to get into these. Only really important one in your sensors, a temp differential. That is the difference between what the box is at currently and what the box is putting out to cool down or heat up.
Okay.
And for whatever, if you have an extra cold day. If you have a 0 degree day and you need the box 34, it'll actually be in heat mode. So that if you're heating the box, you will see a positive temperature differential. If you're cooling the box, you should see a negative temperature differential. Say you want the box to be your set point at 35, you're going to need colder than 35 to make the box 35. Same thing if you're coming down. If the box is at 60 and you're putting 50 degree air or 45 degree air, you would have a temperature differential of negative 15. So that's something that's a little more important, something we might ask for. And it's something if you're on the road and you're wondering why your box isn't cooling down, and you see it only has a temperature differential of -1 or -2, that would say, hey, you know what, it might be low on your Freon charge, just like your at-home air conditioning. So something to keep in mind. Same with the evaporator coil. If you're if it's why is it not working, why is something like that, that'll tell you the exact temperature of the coil in the unit. If the thing's covered in ice, it won't go below 32 degrees. That sensor will say 32 no matter what you're trying to do to it, and that might actually indicate you need to do a manual defrost. Past that, your ambient air temperature, that just tells you what it's like outside. If it's a 65 degree day and the thing says 65 degrees, yeah, it's working. Now, if it says something crazy like, hey, it's 200 degrees out, the sensor's gone bad, and that might affect how the reefer runs. You can see these are all just extra spares for other sensors and different models, nothing that we use here. So we'll go back to our main menu, and real quick just flip through some of the options under the menu tab, the furthest button on the right. So we'll go into menu, as you'd see it, your pre-trip. That is essentially what we do at the beginning of it. It's on there, you never really need to go through there. The pre-trip is more or less what it does when it's starting. Even if you select it, it's going to go into its own programming pre-trip mode, and then it'll more or less self-check everything before you hit the road. We almost never go through that, right? So we can actually just, let's pre-trip our hour meter, right? And it's just another way to get us back to our total engine running hours. Nothing we're going to really see. You can almost forget that that's there. Stop.
Yeah, I was going to, yeah.
Right.
I want to get out of the cold.
Correct. All right, so now you can see we've purposely put an alarm into the unit, right? You can see here, this is actually a special alarm. It really doesn't happen often. So you don't have any lights. You just have that first row. We put this in here just to show you, when it comes to alarms, this is if you were in that little pre-trip menu. It's telling us that we got out of there before it could finish. We know that we ended it early. Clearing alarms is as simple as there's a clear button, and that'll make the alarm go away. Good rule of thumb is if you clear an alarm and it comes right back, then you don't clear that again because something is actually wrong. But just like even a car, sometimes if your gas cap's loose, you have a stupid check engine light. You clear it, it goes away. Right? So we're going to clear this just to keep going with our little instruction. Because look, now you have no alarms shown on the reefer. Your clear button goes away.
And my lights back.
And your light's back on. Right? So we'll go back in here, back into our menu. So that was our pre-trip. We never use it. Right down that, there's your alarms. If you hit select, it would show you any active alarms if that thing was lit up and said there was something wrong. Right now, we don't have any alarms. So it's nothing we need to worry about. We can exit out of that. If you did have alarms, that's where you would go to find them. Stop. Already on that, but it stays on the last setting you put it on.
Yeah, but he's saying we don't want it the way it is, but for this demonstration, we have to have it like that. So those eyes up there, the alien eyes, wouldn't be on the way we do it.
Right. Here's another little thing, just for you guys, not for the video. You see the...
Oh, the arrow, yeah.
Yeah, you see that arrow? Which way is it pointing?
Up.
So which way is the temperature going right now?
Up.
Yeah, it says the box is too cold, so it's warming up a little bit. That arrow will tell you if you're cooling down or warming up. But that's not for the video, that's common sense.
It's for the video. Common sense, there's not enough out there.
Right.
Start with me. What are we waiting for now? For it to stop?
Nope, we're stopped.
All right, I'm
Perfect.
back on.
You're back on. So right there is where you find your alarms. It will be accompanied by a 1 or 2 digit alarm code number. That's something you're going to have to jot down, write down. Just that way you can give it to roadside or give it to the mechanics. They can figure out what you're looking at. It will also give you a basic description. If you have an engine stopped, if the engine stalled out for some reason, it'll give you, for say, a 37 number engine stopped. That will be your alarm code. Clear it out, it should restart. If it doesn't come back, you're good to go. If it comes right back, you have an issue. But that was basic on alarms. After alarms, we can drop down. You see gauges. That is the same gauges as the front screen. We just went through that previously.
Yes.
So it's all the same things. It's just a different way to get to that menu. Same as sensors. Same thing as the front. It's just another way to get into there. Data logger. That is something purely for the dealerships and the mechanics. It tracks how the unit runs its lifetime. So you don't need to know about that. Hour meters. Right there, that is how many hours. Something you might call, and someone might ask you how many hours are on your unit. That's how you find hour meters. It's just, there's multiple ways to get into some of these. So you can see this one's 23,118 hours.
We're good.
Now you can go down to mode. This is just another thing that's already here. There's your button. There's your mode. If you want it to run continuous, or if you want it on cycle sentry start-stop mode. It's just another way. You can adjust the brightness. If you can't see it, it's a sunny day. If you can find it, you can turn up the brightness on the screen. The time, it's something that you're not going to really need. We're not adjusting the clocks. Prime fuel. If this thing is to ever run out of fuel on the road on you, you can select prime fuel. It's something, it should never happen because they can be more of a pain to refire after they sucked in some air. But you can prime the fuel system if it is so to happen. You fill your tank up. You run the prime system. You can hear the fuel pump running and putting some fuel in the system. That's basically all it's there for. Once again, it's not something that's very common. As long as you got fuel in the tank, you should never have to worry about priming the fuel. And that is every option in the menu and on the start screen of what to push on the unit, what to run through, and anything that you might be asked that you might need to look up.
Thank you.